Okay. So just pause this for the quick and switch to the next song. I mean, Donald Loops, I guess we'll find either way. Hello. Hi, Gamba. Welcome in. Oh, let's crack my wrist. That was more on my knuckles. Whew. Alright. But how's everybody doing tonight? Oh, you guys are doing well. I technically did Death Killer already. Yeah, no, I technically also do. But yeah, so Spooky Story is sad. I think the Uh-oh. There you go. I know for a fact I'm most likely just scare myself with this. I haven't done. Let me go ahead and get some creepypastas because I forgot to get creepypastas, so that was my bad on that account. I've done Laughing Jack. I haven't done Laughing Jill. Yeah, I think we'll stop there for now. My back hurts. Okay, let me just music playing. Yeah, I saw success quite normal back then, with the exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He had been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19. But one night, he vanished. He declared AWOL, and eventually, he was declared missing and dead. Don't know what happened. Think it crashed? No idea what happened. Ten years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marin Doshin. In the same clothes he had been reported to be." His social security number had not been used, and he had no identification on this person. However, they were able to identify him, I guess via fingerprints. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their loved again. Muttering, but no, hardly, but not even a breath could be heard. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen. I'm getting chills from this. Okay. This is a creepypasta, by the way. Okay. Jane Richardson started off as your typical girl, the talk of the town who got it all. 11 girlfriends, a job she enjoys, excellent friends, an amazing family, and a promising future. But in 2006, her world came crashing down when both of her parents, Paula and Bruce Richardson, were brutally murdered by the wanted murderer Jeff the Killer, leaving Jane to have to work more and earn extra money to support herself and to support her sister. Fast forward 2 years later, the government chose Jane after 25 failed attempts to hopefully be the one person to survive a very risky chemical of all abilities, so that the number of serial killers could be slowed down. Subjects would experience violent episodes of homicidal tendencies for the first minute and 30 seconds. She still has perfect 20/20 vision. She is mostly depicted wearing a black dress and high heels, and sometimes black stockings. Other illustrations of Jane sometimes depict her wearing black jeans, black hoodie and undershirt, and black sneakers. Jane was once a kind-hearted, spirited young woman who wanted nothing more than to make her family happy. After the transformation, she still manages to contain her caring and happy nature, but when angered, she is more wrathful, ruthless, and violent. However, this is only towards crime, only towards criminals, rapists, and serial killers, who, contrary to popular belief, are her actual targets. As unlike Jeff, she didn't murder innocent people. Due to the effects of the liquid hate, Jane gained supernatural abilities from substance such as an increase in strength, speed, stamina, healing, agility, and strength and stealth. Other results included increased alcohol, drug, and tobacco tolerance, increased metabolism, running faster than a track athlete on steroids, accelerated healing and limb regeneration, vocal mimicry, and shape-shifting. Jane is also a highly charismatic and intelligent woman. I just realized that. Anyway. And the Lavender Town suicide. It was created when there was a mass suicide from Japanese teenagers after listening to the first version of Lavender Town song from the Pokemon Red and Green games. Back on February 27th, 1996, there was a high peak of suicides. From 7 to 12 ages, children would commit suicide right after the release of the Pokemon Red and Green games. When it was realized what happened, the phenomenon was called the Lavender Town Syndrome. A certain song was adults and older people could not hear this tone due to the fact that the high frequency was heard only by children. Their ears were not fully developed, so they could hear high pitches in the song. This high pitch drove around 200 children to commit suicide. Many had different ways of ending their lives, with the common one being to hang themselves or throw themselves off a high building. Those who didn't commit suicide complained about the ringing in their ears and acting abnormally. Almost all of the children developed illness and other health problems. However, in the modern adaptation of the game, the developers had to change the frequency and tone to prevent risks for future players. Years later, in 2010, a video was uploaded on YouTube. Someone used software to analyze the song. When the software was used, the song had created an image of the unknown. This confused others because unknown didn't appear until the Generation 2 games, Silver, Gold, and Crystal. Not only that, when translated, the unknown. Ben Blue. Whee! Not only that, the unknown spelled leave now. That is creepy. I don't think I've heard of I've heard of games that can do that. Sometimes, but sheesh. Goosebumps. The music isn't exactly helping either, but at the same time. Sheesh, did I try 4 times? Jesus Christ. Apparently I did. Let's do more spooky stories. Let's do more spooky stories. Right, I'm not technically done with my stories either. guess we could do some urban legends. I do know a lot of urban legends. As soon as I find a good one. Let's do Oni. We'll do. Whoops. Okay. I don't think I did Hanako-san, but let's go ahead and do it. Okay. The Legend of Hanako-san. According to the legend, Hanako-san is the spirit of a young girl who haunts school bathrooms. It can be described as a yokai or a yuri. The details of her physical appearance can vary, but is commonly described as her having bob cut hair and wearing a red skirt or a red dress. The details of Hanako-san's origin are also extremely different, and they can vary from different accounts. In some versions, Hanako-san was a child who was murdered by a stranger or an abusive parent in a school bathroom. In some variations, she was a girl who committed suicide in the school bathroom. Others say that she was a child who lived during World War II and was killed in an air raid while hiding in a school bathroom during a game of hide and seek, which was her favorite game. To summon Hanako-san, it is often said that individuals must enter a girl's bathroom on the 3rd floor of school, knock 3 times on the 3rd stall, and ask Hanako-san if she's present. If Hanako-san is there, she will reply with, "Yes, I am." Depending on the story, the individual may then witness the appearance of a bloody or ghostly hand. The hand, or Hanako-san herself, it may pull the individual into the toilet, which can lead to hell. Or the individual may be eaten by a three-headed lizard who claims that the individual was invading Hanako's privacy. I mean, that story I've heard like a lot, but I wasn't actually too familiar with the details. I wasn't actually too familiar with the details. But I guess I could read a small bit of my own. Yes, I could read a small bit of my own, even though it's not done yet. Even though it's not done yet. No, it's not done yet. Okay. Yeah. It feels like I'm no longer there. I'm pale as a ghost. My body is completely see-through. I can fly through walls and through people almost like Casper the Friendly Ghost. I looked around not knowing where I was. Well, what was weird was I could see my body, but I wasn't in it. Next thing I know, I saw a flash of light. I was transported into a large room. Everyone was wearing all black. The women's faces were covered in a black fabric, softer than silk. The men had napkins, tissues for the women to cry into. The men tried to stay strong. They tried to stay strong themselves, but some of them couldn't. I looked around, completely clueless as to where I was. Then I looked into the open casket. I had lost some pigment. What I saw made my unbeating heart sink into my chest. It was me. My eyes were closed. I was wearing a form-fit black dress. My arms were crossed over my chest, almost as if I was receiving a blessing at First Communion. I had no pulse. I was dead. I couldn't believe it. My whole life, I didn't like going to funerals, but I went to my own. I looked around to see many people crying. I then heard the sound of my grandmother cry. I never knew who my parents were. I was told that my mother died giving birth to me when she was only 19. She had complications in her pregnancy, which caused a life or death delivery. My father was held in solitary confinement for abusing me. I was only a little girl, between the ages of 10 weeks to 3 years and to 3.5 years old. On my corpse, there was still the scar I had on my left hand from when he cut my hands with a knife. I was 4 when he was arrested, and I was handed over to my grandmother. Lately, there was no one else in my family to take care of me besides her. She had pretty much raised me from the get-go, and I'm forever grateful for her. She raised me from 4 years old up until the mere age of 18 when I moved out. So I'll never forget the day I died. It was traumatizing. Hi, Gear. How are you? Feels tired. Poor Baba. Hi, CJ. Welcome in. Alright. I guess I could tell a creepy pasta again. Tiki Toby, like, I guess so. We'll go with that. Because that gave you the creeps. Like, it gives a good scare. Okay. I'm getting creeped out. How are you? I'm doing okay. Just trying to get extremely creeped out with these stories. Well, we just ended our ARC stream. If I'd known I would have Rage Angel. It's okay, Gear. How's ARC? How was ARC? Okay. I gotta crack my back. It hurts. Ow. Well, I cracked my back. That shit hurt. That shit hurt. Ow. This is gonna be bad. I swear to God, man. Practically everything like puts you to bed. Ironic enough, it's called Nightmares. Like, the song is called Nightmares. Ironically enough. Made a sacrifice for gem. It was chaos. Yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe lower this a little bit. And hold on, why does this stop pinning? Like, bro, keep it pinned. Bro, keep it pinned. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Brace yourselves, chat, for this. The long road home seemed to go on and on. The road continued to stretch in front of the vehicle endlessly. The light that shone through branches of the tall green trees danced across the window in random patches, and every once in a while, obnoxiously shining in your eyes. The surroundings were full of deep green trees, forming a forest around the road. The only sound was the sound of the car's engine as it traveled down the path. It was peaceful and left a serene feeling. Although the ride seemed like a nice one, it lacked every form of quote-unquote nice from its two passengers. The middle-aged woman behind the steering wheel had neat, short brown hair that fit her complexion quite well. She wore a green V-neck t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans. Diamond-studded earrings decorated each of her ears, which partially showed from behind her haircut. She had deep green eyes, which her shirt brought out, and the lighting seemed to make them more noticeable. There wasn't anything significant about her appearance. She looked like any other quote-unquote average mother you would see on TV shows. And however, the one thing that made her different than quote-unquote average mothers was the dark bags she had under her eyes. Her facial expressions were gloomy and sad, although she generally looked like someone who smiled a lot. She would sniffle every once in a while, and occasionally glance in the rearview mirror to look at her son in the back seat, who was hunched over partially, with his arms held tight around his chest, and his head pressed against the cold window. The boy lacked any normal appearance, and anyone who could plainly see there was something wrong with him. His messy brown hair went every which way, and the luminescent lighting brought out his pale, almost gray skin. His eyes were dark, unlike his mother's, and he wore a white t-shirt and scrub pants that had been provided for him by the hospital. The clothes he had worn before were so shredded and blood-stained that they weren't wearable anymore. The right side of his face bared a few cuts along with a split eyebrow. His right arm was bandaged all the way to the shoulder, which had been shredded when his right side hit the shattered glass. His injuries appeared to be painful, but in reality, he couldn't feel anything. This was just one of the glories of being him. One of the challenges he had to face while growing up was growing up with a rare disease that caused him to completely numb towards pain. Never before he had felt himself get hurt. He could have lost an arm and felt nothing. The other major disorder he had faced, which was the one that deemed him many insulting nicknames in the short time he attended grade school before he switched to homeschooling, was his Tourette's syndrome, which caused him to tick and twitch in ways he couldn't control. He would crack his neck uncontrollably and twitch every once in a while. The kids would tease him and call him Tiki Toby, and they mocked him with exaggerated twitching and laughing. It got so bad he had turned into homeschooling. It wasn't too bad for him to be in a common learning environment, with seemingly every kid poking or more like stabbing him for fun. Toby stared blankly out the window, his face empty of any emotion, and every few minutes, his shoulder, arm, and foot would twitch. Every bump that the car tires hit would make his stomach turn. Toby Rogers was the boy's name, And the last time Toby remembered riding in a car was when it crashed. That's all he thought about. Unconsciously, replaying everything he remembered before he blacked out, over and over again. Toby had been the lucky one. His sister had not been so lucky. When the thought of his sister came, he couldn't help the tears that welled in his eyes. The horrible memories replayed in his mind. Her screaming that had been cut off when the front of the car was smashed in. It all went blank for a moment before Toby opened his eyes to see his sister's body. Her forehead pierced with glass shards, her hips and legs crushed under the force of the steering wheel, and her torso pushed in from the too late inflated airbag. That was the last thing he had seen of his dear older sister. The road home continued on for what seemed like forever. It took so long to get home because his mother wanted to avoid the sight of the crash. When the surroundings gave way to a familiar neighborhood, they were both more ready to get out of the car and step back into their own home. It was an older neighborhood with quaint little houses all next to each other. The car drove in front of a blue house with white window panes. They both quickly noticed that the old vehicle that was parked in front of the house and the familiar figure that stood in the driveway. Toby felt automatic anger and frustration take over him at the sight of his father. His father, who wasn't there. His mother pulled the car into the driveway beside him before turning off the engine and preparing to step out and face her husband. "Why is he here?" Toby said quietly as he looked back at his mother, who reached to open the car door. "He's your father, Toby. He's here because he wants to see you," his mother responded in a monotone voice, trying to sound less shaky. "Yet he couldn't drive up to the hospital to see Lyra before she died?" Toby narrowed his eyes out the window. "He was drunk that night, honey. He couldn't drive." "Yeah, when he's not." Toby pushed the car door open before his mother stumbled out onto the driveway, where he met his father's gaze before looking down at his feet with a stern expression. His mother stepped out of the car behind him and met her husband's eyes before walking around the car. His father opened his arms, expecting a hug from his wife, but she walked past him and put her arm around Toby's shoulder and started leading him inside. "Connie," her husband began in a raspy voice. "What, no welcome home hug, huh?" She ignored her husband's obnoxious words and walked past him with her son under her arm. "Hey, he's 16. He can walk by himself." His father began to follow him in. "He's 17. Connie glared back at him before opening a door to the house and stepping inside. "Toby, why don't we get to get some rest, okay? I'll come get you when dinner's ready." "No, I'm 16. I can walk by myself," Toby said sarcastically and glared back at his father before stumbling up the small staircase and turning into his room, where he slammed the door violently. His little room didn't have much in it, just a small bed, a dresser, a window, and his walls had a few picture frames of his family, back when they were a family. Before his father became an alcoholic and acted violently toward the rest of the family. Toby remembered when he was arguing with his mom and he grabbed her by the hair and shoved her into the floor, and when Lara tried to break it up, he pushed her and she hit her back on the corner of the kitchen counter. Toby never forgave him for what he did to his mother and his sister. Never. Sorry to read chat like fast in case I missed something. Toby didn't care how much his father beat him down. He couldn't feel it anyway. What he did care about was how he intentionally hurt the only two people he cared about. And when he was waiting in the hospital where his sister took her last breaths, the only one who didn't rush there was his dad. Toby stood by the window and looked out at the street. He could have sworn he saw something out of the corner of his eye, but quickly blamed on the meds he was on. When dinner time had come and his mother called up to him, Toby came down the stairs and hesitantly sat down at the table across from his father and in between his mother and an empty chair. It was quiet as his parents picked at their food, but Toby refused to eat. Instead, he just watched his dad with a blank stare. His mother caught him staring and elbowed him slightly. Toby looked over at her slightly, and then down at his uneaten food, which he still didn't touch. Toby laid in bed. He pulled his covers over his head and stared at the window. He was tired, but there was no way he would fall asleep. He couldn't. There was too much to think about. He had been debating on whether or not to follow his mother's directions and forgive his father, or continuing holding a grudge with his boiling hatred. He heard his door creak open, and his mother padded into the room and sat down on the bed next to him. She reached over and rubbed his back, which had been turned to her. "I know it's hard, Toby. Trust me, I understand. But I promise you it will get better," she said softly. "When is he going to leave?" Toby said in an innocent tone in his shaky voice. Connie let her gaze down and fall down to her feet. "I don't know, honey. He's staying as far as I know, she replied. Toby didn't respond. He just continued to look forward, holding his damaged arm near his chest. A few minutes of silence. His mother sighed before she leaned in to kiss his cheek and stood up to walk out the room. Good night, she said as she closed the door. The hours slowly passed, and Toby couldn't quit tossing and turning. Every time he let his imagination take over, he heard the screeching of the tires, the screaming of his sister, and he would uncontrollably jerk in bed. He threw off his covers and laying on his back, he pulled his pillow over his face and cried into it. You could hear his own pitiful weeping. He would have been screaming and crying if he didn't press his pillow over his face. After a few seconds, he threw the pillow off his face and sat up, hunched over, holding his head and breathing roughly, tears streaming from his eyes. He couldn't help but cry. He tried to keep it in, but he couldn't stop the whining and whimpering as he sat there shaking. He inhaled before he stood up and walked around his bed to the window and peered out, taking deep breaths, trying to calm down. He rubbed his eyes and looked at a group of tall pine trees across the street. He stopped suddenly, and his gaze slowly centered on something standing under the streetlight. He heard ringing in his ears and couldn't look away. The figure stood beside the streetlight, about 2 feet shorter than it did. Long arms draped at its side, as if it stared up at him with non-existent eyes. The figure had no facial features to speak of. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Yet it held Toby's hypnotized stare, seemingly peering into his very being. The ringing in his ears grew louder and louder each second he stared before suddenly it went all black. The next morning, Toby woke in his bed. He felt different. He wasn't tired at all. And when he consciously woke up, it felt like he had been lying there for hours. He had no thoughts flowing through his mind. He sat up slowly and stumbled over to the wall. But when he stood, he automatically felt dizzy. He stumbled to the stairwell and walked down the stairs. His parents were sitting at the table. His father was tuned in to the small TV that had sat on the countertop, and his mother was reading the newspaper. She quickly looked over when she felt Toby's presence looming behind her. Well, good morning, sleepyhead. You've been sleeping forever. She greeted him with a hesitant smile. Toby slowly looked over at the clock and noticed that it was 12:30 p.m. God, that reminds me of someone I know. Anyways. I made you breakfast, but it got cold. I was going to wake you, but I felt you needed sleep. Her expression fell from happy to worried as her son persisted responding to her. Are you alright? Toby stumbled over and sat by his father. He felt as if he was on an idle and had no control over his actions. He was seeing everything he did, but I didn't register in his brain properly. He reached out to his father's arm, but his hand ended up getting slapped. His father turned to him abruptly and pushed his chair over with his foot. Don't touch me, boy, he yelled. His mother stood up. All right, none of that. That's the last thing we need. The days went by, and things continued on as they were. Connie spent most of her time cleaning the house, and her rude husband spent most of his time ordering her around. It was just like how it used to be before the crash. Toby never really left his room. He would sit by his bed and tremble. His mind would wander, but his thoughts changed too fast to be remembered. He would pace around his small room like a caged animal or stare out the window. The unhealthy cycle continued. Connie continued to be pushed around by her husband, being way too submissive to him, and Toby remained in his room. Before he could think twice, he would begin to chew on his hands, tearing the flesh off his fingers. He would gnaw his hands until they bled. But his mother walked in on him while he was doing so. She reacted horribly. She rushed him downstairs, grabbed the first aid kit, wrapping his hands in bandages. Afterwards, she demanded that he wouldn't leave her sight again. Toby isolated himself so much that he grew to hate being around others. His memory grew glitchy as well. He'd start missing memory of minutes, hours, days, and so on. He would begin talking nonsense about things completely unrelated to the conversations he would have. He'd go off about seeing things, sharks in the sink as he washed the dishes, hearing crickets in his pillows and seeing ghosts outside his bedroom window. His mother grew so anxious about his mental health, so she decided it would be good for him to talk to a professional about what he was feeling. Connie walked Toby into the building, holding his hand and guiding him in. She walked him up to the front desk and began talking to the lady who sat behind it. Mrs. Rogers? The lady asked. Yes, that's me. Connie nodded. We're here to see Dr. Oliver? I'm here with Toby Rogers. Yes, right this way. The lady stood up and led them down a long hallway. Toby looked at the framed artwork down the halls and tuned in to the sound of the lady's high heels on the hardwood floor. She opened a door to her room with a table and 2 chairs. If we can get him to sit here for a few minutes, I'll get the doctor. She smiled and held the door open. Toby stumbled into the room and sat down at the table. He looked over at his mother and the lady before the door slowly shut behind them. He looked around the room before he held up his tightly bandaged hands and began to bite at the bandages to unwrap his hands. But he was interrupted as the door swung open and a young woman in a black and spotted dress with light blonde hair stepped in, holding a clipboard and a pen. "Toby?" she asked with a smile. Toby looked up at her and nodded. "Nice to meet you, Toby. My name is Dr. Oliver." She put her hand out for him to shake, but hesitantly pulled away when she noticed his bandaged hands. "Oh!" She smiled nervously before clearing her throat and sitting in a chair across the table from him. "So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Try to answer them as honestly as possible, okay?" She placed her clipboard down at the table. Toby nodded slowly and felt his restrained hand in his lap. "How old are you, Toby?" 17. He responded quietly. She wrote that down on the paper that was clipped to the clipboard. "What's your full name?" "Toby Aaron Rogers." "When's your birthday?" April 28th. "Who's your immediate family?" Toby paused for a minute before answering her question. "My mom, my dad, my sister." "I heard about your sister, dear. I'm really sorry." Her expression faded into a sad, pity-filled look. Toby nodded. "Do you remember anything from the crash, Toby?" Toby looked away from her. His mind went blank for a moment. He looked down on his lap, and in the surrounding area, he heard a faint ringing sound. His eyes widened and he froze in place. "Toby?" the counselor asked. "Toby, are you listening?" Toby felt a shiver go down his spine until he froze once again and slowly looked over at the window through the door where he saw it. A darkened, featureless figure peering at him. He stared, eyes widened. The ringing grew louder and louder until suddenly the loud voice of the counselor broke his trance. "Toby!" she yelled. Toby jumped and fell sideways off his chair and backed up into the corner. Dr. Oliver stood up, holding her clipboard to her chest, a surprised look in her eyes. Toby met her eyes again, his breath hitching as he twitched. That night, Toby lay in bed, his eyes His eyes were dazed as he stared straight up at the ceiling. He could feel himself begin to doze off when he heard the scattering footsteps down his hallway. He sat up and looked toward the doorway. His door wide open. There was no light. There was no light. Everything was lit by the luminescent blue glow of the moon through his window, leaving a cold lighting. He stood up and slowly made his way toward the doorway. When suddenly the door, which was previously wide open, slammed in his face. He gasped and fell back. He was out of breath. He was out of breath when he hit the ground and began to breathe heavily. His eyes wide open. He had to wait a few seconds before getting back on his feet. He reached out and grasped the cold door handle with his bandaged hand, and it creaked open. He looked out into the dark hallway and tiptoed out of his room. The window at the end of the hallway lit up the darkness with blue moonlight as he padded his way down. He could hear footsteps rustling around him and faint giggling followed by the pitter-patter of small feet, which sounded like a child had run in front of him, giggling and running around. The hallway was a lot longer than he remembered. It seemed endless, like the ride home from the hospital. He heard the door creak in front of him. "Mom?" he called in a shaky voice. Suddenly, a door slammed behind him, and he jumped and turned around. Behind him, he heard a long, eerie groan that sounded like a croak right in his ear. He turned around as fast as he could, and was suddenly face to face with none other than his dead sister. Her eyes were clouded white, her skin pale, the right side of her jaw dangling there by tissue and muscle, glass protruding from her forehead, black blood leaking down her face. Her blonde hair pulled up in a ponytail as it always was, and she was wearing her gray t-shirt and athlete shoes, which were dirty and spotted with blood. Her legs were bent in ways that they shouldn't be. She stood emitting a long croaking noise only an inch away from Toby's face. Toby yelped and fell back. Ah! I can't actually scream because it's almost 11:30 at night. He started to crawl backward away from her, but he was unstable to break the eye contact he held with her blank-dead eyes. He dragged himself backward until he backed up into something. He stopped for a second. Everything was dead silent, except for his heavy breathing and crying. He slowly looked up to meet the blank face of a tall, dark figure. The same figure that stood over him now. Behind the tall, dark mask were rows of children, looked to range from 3 to 10 years old. Their eyes completely black and dark blue Dark black blood leaked from their eyes and from their eye sockets. He screamed and stood up as fast as he could, only to be tripped by the dark tendrils that wrapped around his ankle. He fell straight on his stomach and got the wind knocked out of him. He tried to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. He wheezed out before it all went black. Toby woke with a start. He screamed out loud and sat up as fast as he could, completely short on breath. He wheezed out and held his chest with his bandaged hands. It was a dream. It was just a dream. He lay back down in his bed and rolled over on his side. It felt against weight had been lifted off his chest as he took deep breaths. He stood up, padded over to his window. He saw nothing. Nobody was there. No ghosts, no figures, nothing. He heard the rustling and coughing of his father outside the doorway. His door was closed. He walked over and opened it, looking out into the hallway once again. He padded down the hallway and into the kitchen, where he found his father standing and having a smoke. And having a smoke in the living room. Toby waited for a second and watched him from around the corner before a burning feeling started deep in his chest. Deep boiling anger overtook him. He heard the little imaginary voices in his head. Do it, do it, do it, they chanted. He turned away and held his arms. He felt like he actually had control over himself, unlike he did for the past few weeks since he got home from the hospital. He actually had complete thoughts for just moments before the chanting of the little voices clouded them. Sorry, I thought that was an false alarm. Kill him. He wasn't there. He wasn't there. Kill him. Kill him. They continued on. Toby trembled. No. He wasn't going to do it. What, was he going crazy? No, he won't kill anyone. He can't. He hated his father, but there was no way he was going to kill him. That was it. The last thought he had before he fell into an idle thought once again. The influence of the voices in his head was too much. He began to silently walk up behind his father. He reached over the counter to the knife in the case. He whipped it in his hand. He felt the sensation take over his chest. He let out a snicker. Again, I can't do it. My laugh is loud. He began laughing so hard he had to gasp for breath. His father turned around abruptly before he felt brute force shove him onto the floor. He grunted as the air was knocked out of him. What? He looked up at the boy who stood over him, grasping a kitchen knife in his hand. Toby, what are you doing? He went to sit up and put his arms out in front of him in self-defense. But before he knew it, Toby was on top of him. He went to grab his neck, but his father reached out and blocked his hand by grabbing onto his wrist. Stop! Get off of me, you little fucker! He yelled, and with with his other hand, he threw an off-center punch towards Toby's shoulder, but he didn't stop. The look in Toby's eyes was not sane. It looked as if a demon took control. He yelled back and stabbed the knife into his father's chest, but his father blocked him and grabbed onto his wrist once again. He went shoving back, but Toby kicked his feet in front of him and landed on a hard blow straight on his father's face. His father recoiled and pulled his arms away to cup his face. But Toby got back up and drove the knife straight into his shoulder. More. Digger. His father let out a loud cry and went to pull the knife out, but before he could, Toby threw his fist straight into his face. He began to pound his fist into his head, laughing and wheezing. He cracked his neck and grabbed the knife and ripped it into his father's shoulder. He drove it deep into his dad's chest and repeatedly stabbed into his torso, blood spilling out and getting splattered everywhere. He didn't stop until his father's body went still. He threw the knife over to the side and leaned over his body, coughing and panting. He stared at his father's smashed-in face and sat there twitching until a loud scream broke the silence. He looked over to see his mother standing a few feet away, covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Toby!" she screamed. "Why did you do that?" she cried. "Why?" she screamed. Toby stood up and began to back away from his father's bloody corpse. He began to back over to the kitchen. He looked down at his blood-soaked bandages on his hands and looked up at his mother one last time before he turned and ran out of the house. He ran into the garage and slammed his hand against the control panel on the wall and pushed the button to open the garage door. Before he ran out, he noticed his father's hatchets, which had been hanging off the tool rack above the table full of jars to the brim with rusty old nails and screws. 11:30. I'm gonna stop there. Spooky sun. Yeah, words. I can't speak. I'm gonna stop there from Spooky Story Sunday. Because I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I sound extremely tired. Not just extremely tired, but I sound extremely I don't know what's the best way for me to describe it, because I know that my voice is deep as hell. It's pretty deep. Well, I'm not sure. CJ, if you're still on chat, are you streaming soon? Oh my god. because I don't know if he fell asleep or not. When I see him, like, I see him in VC. I mean, like, I see him in VC. I think he's probably sitting upstream. I'm not sure. Oh my god. Oh, my back hurts. Oh my god. My back. Sorry, chat. My back. Oh my god. I'm like looking at a switch and just like waiting for when he's gonna go live. Let me just unpin that. There it is. Okay. Boy. Okay. I don't know why it's showing me that. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm not gonna judge that. Oh my god. Damn, my stomach hurts for some reason. I am. Deals me up, my stomach's in a lot of pain. I'll think it's true because I don't see his life. But we're gonna. I think they're just like chilling in VC. Probably. Okay. Let's go ahead and read out. Let's go ahead and read out. Should we raid? You know what? Let's read Queen Acanthus. Whoops. Why? I forgot to spell her full name. YRM. Whoops. At. Queen Acanthus. Queen. I spell the last name. Acanthus. Did I spell it right? Oh, US. Whoops. There we go. I think I got it. I can't say the right. Of course I can't. Even in mod view, I can't even see it. Oh my god. But we're gonna raid on over to Queen Acanthus. I think we got the right person. Because I spelled it right the first time. Or not that first time. I said it right, like. Okay. Okay. Blue. But I was exhausted. And I was exhausted. Alright. I'll see you guys. Bye.